I love the sport so much. And as you mentioned in the beginning, I have spoken about that this might be my last fight. But then something really amazing happened. And he said, Joe, look, the entire side of the crowd that was right by the ring, they got up and they started clapping. And Chet looked at me and goes, Joe, this is for you. And it was probably the most beautiful experience I've ever experienced in a ring.
So what do you think? Is this really the end of your fight career?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of A Black Belt Way of Life. I am your host, Master Joseph Lupo Jr. This episode is brought to you by Whispers of Wisdom, written by my dear friend, Master Anthony Graff. Whispers of Wisdom, crafting character through mentorship and storytelling artistry. Find your copy today on Amazon. This is essential for any martial arts school owner or parent. Whispers of Wisdom. A little change to the format of our episode today. I'm actually going to hand over the reins to a very dear friend of mine, one of the amazing producers here at Press Record Studios, Mr. Matthew Kaplowitz.
Master Joe Lupo. It's nice to be on this side of the chair for a change.
It is, right? Now I'm in the hot seat now.
Yeah, well, that's familiar territory for you, though, in most cases, because for folks who don't necessarily know me, some of you might recognize my face, a lot of you might not. But I've known Joe and his family since sixth grade, when your family first moved into the neighborhood. Yeah.
Wow.
And around the time of when the New York Black Belt Center opened in Whitestone, I was there 2010. 100%. One of their first videos was done there.
You were a very big part when we opened up.
So I've been chronicling the story of the New York Black Belt Center since the opening. I filmed a lot of videos you've seen. Yeah, literally day one there. Mm-hmm. And here we are now. Now I'm producing A Black Belt Way of Life along with Richard Butler and Press Record Studios. So long journey for us.
Amazing journey.
And lots of emotions, all the things you hate having to go into, basically, that I bug you on camera with. So that is why today I am in the captain's chair, if you will. That's why I'm taking over this interview, because this is going to be a very more personal episode for Master Joe. Typically on the show, he's interviewing different guests who do different things, talk about different things related to martial arts, mental health, fitness, all the different things. But in this case, today the show is 100% about you, because we are taking a trip today.
Yes,
and we're taking a trip to Mexico.
Yes.
And there's a basically, as I've told you now, we've also been coaching Master Joe for this podcasting thing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've told you is it's all about storytelling.
Yes.
And also it's about top loading, putting your main event at the top of the show. So we're going to lead a little bit heavy here. So your event in Mexico, since I think I first started hearing you talk about it, you were telling me, yo, this is going to be my final fight. You've been saying that for the longest time. You walked into this thing knowing that this potentially will be Master Joe's retirement fight. So I have to just ask to kick things off here. I mean, well, number one, why did you make that choice? Why was Mexico going to be the place for you to wrap things up? And why did you go into this fight just thinking that?
I have to take it back to when I competed in Korea last year, which was a very, very big event for me. I put a lot of work into it. I lost a tremendous amount of weight for that event. I went down a weight class and I won. Thank God. Thank to everyone that assisted in that process of me winning. And after that victory, certain things happened in my personal life and in the school. And I felt the need, because to be very honest with you, I thought Korea was going to be my last one for a very long time.
I think I remember you talking about that a little bit as well.
And a big reason is my kids are young. And when I commit myself to something, I'm a firm believer and I put 100% into it, no less. Because I owe it to my family. I owe it to especially my children, my wife, my students, because this is a physical sport. And I want to come back healthy to them. I want to come back in one piece.
Ideally, yeah, that's the best way to come back.
I have a business to run. I have classes to teach. So I get very, very serious when it comes to competition, as anyone should. This isn't, you don't half-ass things like this. You go all in or nothing. And that's my firm belief. And after Korea, I felt there was something missing. I needed something to prove to myself that I could do this on my own. So when the talk of Mexico came about, I was like, this has to be it. And then once my very close friends, teammates, who I basically consider brothers, they also made the team too. Masters John Rodriguez, Carlos Villanueva, Chet Bridgewater, a gentleman by the name of Kurvan Abdulkadirov, who's come very close to us.
Yeah, this is the NYBBC All-Star lineup.
Exactly. And I was like, what better place? And then obviously alongside my amazing Masters team teammates. It's tough. It's tough to compete. It's a lot of juggling. Like I said, I wear many hats, from being a business owner to being a family man and then to be a competitor. I don't like missing things in my kids' lives, especially they're at such an age right now. I don't want to miss my son's soccer games.
I mean, even if they know you're going to be gone, you prep them for it. It's still the fact that
they know, and
dad's not there.
Listen, and they're proud of me, and I get the support. But me personally, it's very, very hard for me to leave them. Korea was a very long trip. Mexico, I knew it was going to be short. I knew it was going to be an in and out trip. We were there for 4 days, and it was actually a holiday weekend. So upon coming back home on Monday, I was going to spend the entire day with my family because it was Veterans Day. So all that played into it. And I said, you know what? This is the perfect opportunity. And again, I put 100% into it, and the results showed. I came away with the gold, and it was an amazing, amazing feeling. Wow. So, I think it's any athlete's dream. You want to go out on top.
You want to go out with the belt on around your waist. Yeah.
100%. Medal around your neck.
Exactly. So we are going to come back to that medal around your neck, though, because I actually want to back things up for a second here. Because as you always say, there's a method to your madness. There
always is.
To my madness tonight, too, and how we're going to handle these things here. And I want to back it up for a second. I'm going to paraphrase now the normal host of this show, Master Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me. I want to hear about the very first tournament you ever did as a kid.
Oh, wow.
I want to go all the way back to your very first tournament, what you remember from that tournament, and why you did that tournament. And I'm assuming that your dad was there for that one as well.
100%.
Grandmaster Joseph Lupo Sr. So I'd like to hear your experiences and your memories. First tournament, your dad by your side, coaching. What was that like?
I was 5 years old.
5 years old, first tournament. Wow.
It was a point-style tournament.
Was there a gear? Or was this,
yes, it was a headgear, gloves, and I guess what do they call them? Like
the little footy things?
Footy things, kicking boots. We used to call them floppy shoes.
See, you weren't going Kyokushin bare knuckle.
No, definitely wasn't.
All right,
at 5 years old, no.
No child endangerment here.
Definitely not. It was Master Bai tournament in New Jersey. And we went with our entire school, the Mugung Taekwondo Institute. And to be honest with you, I can't remember how it came to be. All I do remember was I was super excited, not only to compete, but to see a lot of the older students compete from the school. Like that was like the cherry on top. It wasn't just me competing, because when I was a little kid, my father would take me to my class, and then I would stay in the school and watch him teach all these amazing black belts.
You're just absorbing it at 5 years old.
Absorbing everything. And the crazy thing is, I don't remember much of my matches. I remember the outcome. I won, and that trophy was taller than me. Now that trophy still sits in my school, believe it or not. It's tiny. But back then, that thing was huge. So that's a little foggy. I don't remember that too much, me competing, but I remember watching my seniors compete. And vividly in my mind at that tournament, the grand championship match was Mark Williams against one of our Munesli Taekwondo team members, Tony Lapuma. And that I don't want to go too much into that grand championship match.
It sounds like it left a mark on you, though.
It left a huge impression on me, that fight. And I'm blessed to still be in touch with both those men today. It left such an impression on me, and that's when I knew I wanted to keep competing. That's where the competition bug happened, watching that grand championship match. That was my inspiration.
I mean, it's kind of funny. You think about just the perspective of what you're having here with these memories is like, again, and just perspective in general. Because you're talking 5 years old, a trophy that's bigger than you.
Yeah.
Today, you can just hold it in your hands. It's not a big deal. But I bet the feeling in your mind is that it's still, an 8-foot tall trophy.
Oh, it still is. It's I have that picture right next to my desk. And it's there strategically when I'm sitting down, when someone sits at my desk, I'll point to that picture. And I'll tell that parent, I was your kid's age. I was doing this at your kid's age. And they're like, oh my God, you did? I'm like, yeah. It's a great memory.
So why did 5-year-old, not quite yet Master Joe want to compete in a tournament? Was it your choice? Or did your dad say, I want you to do this?
My dad gave me the push. My dad never forced me to do anything. My dad didn't even teach me when I was small. He let his junior black belts always teach me, because the method to his madness was he didn't want me to just copy him. He wanted me to be my own person. And if Taekwondo was gonna become my love, it had to become my love on my own. Not because my dad did it. Did it influence me? Of course. I wanted to be nothing. I wanted to be my dad. I wanted nothing more than that. But I did it on my own. So he gave me that initial push. He took me to that tournament, obviously registered me for that tournament. Obviously,
yeah.
And
little Joe signing a crayon, right?
Right. And I just took it from there.
This is kind of the roots of combat for Master Joe here today, because I think it's an important way to kind of get to the story here. And,
yes,
this tournament we're going to talk about in a little bit took place in Mexico, but this isn't the first time you traveled overseas. You've done it as an adult, but you did it with your dad a few times also, right? Like you traveled. So talk to me about some of those experiences. Like, where'd you guys go? I've seen some photos, but I don't really know a ton about those teenage Joe experiences. Me
and my dad, we traveled all over the country to compete. Traveling abroad, unfortunately, didn't happen until after he passed. Which made it more sentimental for me, especially going to Italy to compete. That was a tough one.
Yeah.
Me and my dad, we spoke a lot about where we wanted to take Taekwondo, and one of the places he had always said to me was he wanted to go back to Italy, his birth country, and do something big over there. So that was a tough one. But with the USA Masters team, I had the pleasure of competing at the European Masters Games. We were at the Asian Pacific Masters Games in Korea, and now just recently in Mexico. So those are 3 amazing international trips I was blessed to compete.
And this is in the span of like how many years did you start doing all these international tournaments?
5 years.
5 years, right? Because there is a big gap in your competition record.
Yeah.
Because from teenager, you're doing stuff. As a young adult, you're doing things. Then you open the New York Black Belt Center in 2010.
Yeah.
And competition comes to a halt for you.
It did. Because at that point, I was focused on building a school. And then I was focused on building my athletes. I played the role my father played for us growing up. I was there to support my athletes. I was willing to go as far as I could take it with them. Whether that was, again, competing all over the country, competing at international opens. I've taken my my guys to Canada quite a few times. I've taken my guys to Costa Rica, traveling as much as I can, all while balancing the school and a family.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Like I did a documentary back in 2014 that was called Girl Fight, a Muay Thai Story. And part of that story was following the head coach of this all-women's Muay Thai gym. And not only was she the coach and owner of this school out in the Jersey Shore, she's also fighting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things she talks about is like, you really can't do both. It's got to be one or the other because one of them will have to suffer.
100%. 100%. And it's a sacrifice you have to be willing to take. And I didn't want anything to suffer. I didn't want my school to suffer. I didn't want myself to suffer as an athlete. And with that, a tremendous amount of sacrifice was made. Like I said, I didn't want to miss anything of my children. I didn't want to miss any family time. But it definitely was difficult. I
mean, there's no denying it's a tough thing to do.
The coffee addiction intensified. Let's just leave it there. Because
Was there a time when espresso didn't run through your veins?
I can't remember that.
I didn't think so.
No. You sliced me open. I'm brown. And it's I didn't want anything to suffer. And people saw that. And you know what? People appreciated that. I remember parents coming up to me that they would be like, Master Joe, you look tired, man. Why don't you go home? I'm like, no. I got class to teach. And my family understood it, thank God. And we did the best we could do.
Do you remember when you decided you wanted to fight again? When did that happen?
The competition bug came back in late 2018. When my daughter was born in 2018, I was at my unhealthiest.
I can't imagine that.
I masked it very, very well. But I actually ballooned up to 260 pounds. And when my daughter was born, for 3 months, she was colicky. And it was rough. She wasn't sleeping at night. I had to let my wife obviously sleep at night. She was tired from being up with my daughter throughout the day. And now she's not sleeping at night. So I'm coming home 9:00 at night, pacing up and down the hallway, trying to get my daughter to sleep. There were days I went to work. I went to go teach with like 15 minutes of sleep. And my health just plummeted. And then one day I did a training seminar with 3 other schools. And I remember getting that picture and looking at myself in that picture. And I had no neck. I was huge. And I was like, no, something's got to, I just got to stop. I came home to my wife. I said, I can't do this anymore. I was wearing extra large clothes. I couldn't hide it anymore. No amount of black clothing was going to hide.
Black only flattens so much.
It could. And that's when literally, like how they say, like you go cold turkey. That was it. I went straight on a diet.
So what changed? What was gone?
Oh.
What'd you have left? Maybe it's a better question.
I started, and I people notice, I started with a keto diet. So I basically stopped being Italian.
That must be the hardest thing you had ever had to do.
Pasta was gone. Bread was gone. Carbs was gone. It's a very heavy protein diet. High fat, high protein. Your body's going through ketosis and you become a fat burning machine. So in 3 months, I dropped 25 pounds. And I'm like, oh man, I could start wearing white again. I'm starting to look good. And the weight just keeps coming off. And it kept coming off. Now I'm under 200 pounds. And I stopped doing keto because a side effect of keto is your cholesterol goes up. And I never had cholesterol problems in my life. So I stopped and I just started eating clean. And around that time, my grandmaster had approached me to promote to my 6th degree. So I got in even better shape. And it just kept happening. And I started feeling lighter. I started moving better. I started kicking. And it's like I went back 10 years. I was approaching 40, but I felt like I was in my late 20s with all the weight that was coming off. And my very close friend who was on, this podcast, John Rodriguez, I was always sparring with him on the side, helping him compete. And just one day I looked at him and I was like, bro, what do you think if I started to compete again? And his eyes lit up. It was like a kid in a candy store.
This is the guy who literally kicked through a wall in the past. So I'm sure he's very excited for that to happen again.
Right?
Can't wait.
Yeah, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. It was 2019. And around that time, I wasn't involved with the Masters team yet, but I saw there was a competition, the Masters Games, an open competition happening in Torino, Italy. And I went up to my coach at the time and I was like, I want to go. I want to go to Italy. And at that point, he said to me, there was a group of athletes who had just gotten together. They're forming this team, the USA Masters team. Because I was ready to go to Italy on my own. I didn't know anything about this group of athletes that went together. So I knew some of the athletes and got me in touch with Master Wayne DeRosa. And we hooked up. And one thing led to another. And the next thing you know, I'm preparing to go to Torino, Italy. But I knew beforehand I needed to get a competition under my belt. I needed to get back into the ring. I need ring time.
You got to shake that rust off.
You got to shake that rust off. It's one thing.
When was the last time, by the way, that you had competed at that point?
Over 15 years. And I knew I needed to get that rust off, so to say. And I need a competition. There's only so much you could do in the school. The school, at the end of the day, is the comfort zone. In the competition ring, you have a referee, obviously. You have a crowd. You have people yelling, people screaming. You need to be in the atmosphere. So my first competition was actually national championships.
Low stakes.
Yeah, low stakes, right? I didn't go to some local event. I went to nationals with my team. And I step on that mat for my first fight. I remember throwing a few kicks and my distance and timing was off. But then I scored my first point. I was like, did that just happen? Like, I was surprised. I looked back at the screen. I was like, oh my God, I just scored 2. Round 1 ends. I'm up 2-0. Then something clicked in round 2. I landed my first head kick. And from there, the confidence just grew and grew. And I felt like a teenager again. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I felt like a teenager. I felt like a young adult. And during that fight, I actually heard my father's voice.
What did he say to you?
When my father coached me, he always spoke to me in Italian. Which is kind of slick, because
no one else can hear it. No one else knows what he's saying.
Unless the other opponent was Italian or understood, it was a smart thing to do.
It's not that unfair.
And and he was telling me in Italian, "Let's go," in Sicilian actually, "Let's go."
How does that sound?
Amunine, let's go, and it just started happening, and I won that match. My God! After I landed the spin hook kick to the head. I want to say it finished 19-2.
Wow.
Some crazy score like that. And oh my God, it felt so good. It felt great. And then going into the final, I'll say this now, I actually beat myself.
How'd you beat yourself?
I made some really, really dumb errors. Very dumb.
Were you just getting kind of cocky in the moment and just...
I don't want to say cocky. I did get caught up in the moment. I didn't expect to win like that. And my opponent, great guy. Whenever I see him in a tournament, I have the utmost respect for him. But that was my match. But then my final match, and I see this gentleman too at competitions, and we're very friendly. I made some dumb mistakes. I landed a kick to the head, and I did something very uncharacteristic. I started walking backwards, and I allowed him to hit me back. Score's tied. Then I score again. And what do? I don't cover. I start walking backwards. I get hit back. Kudos to him. So we're at a tie score, and I completely lost track of the clock. And with like a second left, I stepped out of the ring. And that's a bad mistake on my part. I ended up losing. But like I tell my students, I don't like using the word lose. Granted, it's an L. But I like to say we either win or we learn. And boy, did I learn in that match. I needed that.
And we talked about that with your episode with Anthony Graff also. We talked about how it is very, very important to lose.
Oh,
and there's
very
a reason
important.
why. Yeah.
Very important. And I needed that. And I needed that, especially going to Italy. It humbled me real quick. Because after not being in the ring so long, to be honest, you really shouldn't win your first fight. You really shouldn't.
And then you did it 19-2.
Yeah, against someone who's been competing for years. And I needed that wake-up call.
So it's a little bit of one part confidence boost, but the other part wake-up call.
Humble.
Yeah.
We need a slice of humble pie every now and then. And you know what? It tasted good. It tasted real good.
It tasted like penalty line.
Oof.
Yeah.
And it definitely prepared me to go to Italy with the Masters team.
Well, I think we're going to save the Italy story for a different episode.
All right.
Because let's get back on track now. Let's start getting over to Mexico here.
All right.
And, so when did you actually decide that Mexico was going to be, we kind of talked about this in the beginning, but like when did you decide that you were going to go and do Mexico in general?
Around my birthday. May 5th. That's when I really made the decision that, you know what? We're going to start training. Post-Korea, as any athlete who cuts weight, we always gain a little bit of weight afterwards.
It happens.
And in April, I host a seminar every year for Masters athletes to qualify to be on the USA Masters team. It's an official seminar for the team alongside, our amazing team captain, Miss Trinity Tong Osborne. And the coach for that seminar was Grandmaster Michelle Smith from upstate New York. And I hadn't thought of Mexico at the seminar, but I definitely wasn't in the shape I was in when I competed in Korea. I was in phenomenal shape for Korea. But then some things happened personally, and I fell off a little bit. So at that seminar, I actually broke my rib.
I was there for that. I remember watching that on camera and being like, that kick looked like it really hurt.
And I sucked it up.
You did. You were the whole time. You were like, oh, no, I'm fine. And I kept seeing you just crumble more and more. And I went over to Vinny. I was like, Vinny, we need some ice, please. He's not going to come over.
And it didn't happen while I was sparring, if you remember. It happened, while Coach Smith, and I love you, ma'am. Ma'am, mwah. I love you. Thank you for doing that. She was demonstrating a technique and just caught me in the right spot. And I breathed in and I sucked it up and I kept going because that's who we are. That's who we are.
Wasn't it a lead leg roundhouse?
Oh, man, it was rough.
Yeah.
She was demonstrating the art of the cover punch, but then followed up with a lead leg roundhouse kick and pop. But you know what? Again, humble pie. Humble pie. I woke up the next day. I was like, wow, that just happened. But it motivated me. And around that time, the decision was made that the traveling Masters team was going to go to Mexico. And that's when I was like, you know what? I need this for myself. So I recovered. I'm not going to lie. I got back to training sooner than what the doctor said, but that's just me.
That's just you.
That's just me. You know that about me?
Yeah. Doctors, pshaw, who needs them?
Right. The doctor always tells me, you need to kick your feet up and relax. And I look at him crooked. I'm like, yeah, sure. But we keep going. That's who we are. You know, I'm a product of my environment when it comes to that. And the day of my birthday, I decided to start running. And from that day forward, I increased it and I started running 5K a day. Once we got more information about Mexico, I knew the running was the right direction to go. Because at that point, I had learned the elevation of where we were going to compete.
Yeah, well, we should tell folks about that too, because
yeah,
you know, you're not just going to flat land. You're going to someplace that has a much higher.
We're not
elevation.
going to the concrete jungle of NYC, you know, or Florida.
You were in the mountains.
Or Texas. No, we were in the mountains, 9,000 feet above sea level.
That's basically like if you were in Denver, Colorado. Yeah, around there.
Yeah, it was. So I knew, because like I said, I sat down, I spoke to my wife, and I said, I really need to do this. I looked at her and I go, I really need to compete for myself. I had to prove something to myself. And I knew the direction I took with the running was going to help me. Especially running in the neighborhood where the school is, you know, Bayside. It's considered Bayside Hills.
Yes, there's a lot of slopes in there, a lot of very steep inclines.
So I knew that was the approach I needed. And from 1 mile, it went to 2. Next thing you know, I'm running 5K a day, 3.1 miles. And now I'm competing with myself and this watch I have around my wrist. And that's when I put the blinders on. I knew I had to dedicate an hour a day just to myself, not half-ass on teaching my students. I'm running a business. Not miss any of my son's soccer games or miss my daughter's dance recital. So I knew I wasn't going to compete prior to going to Mexico. I knew I wasn't going to, because I didn't want to miss anything for my family. So I really had to intensify my training after I taught my morning classes, take that time to myself to run, and at night with my athletes again. But it was a little bit of a slow process because I still had a broken rib.
Yeah. So that's basically putting pressure on you while you're trying to breathe.
Exactly. So I couldn't jump in and start doing chest protector drills. I couldn't jump in and start sparring. That didn't happen, I want to say, until the late summer. That's when I really felt comfortable. And I was like, you know what? I'm jumping back in. I wiped the dust off that chest protector. I just went in. And I remember taking that first shot by my boy Philip. And I was like, all right, we got this. We're good. And we just amped it up.
So we were talking about road work for a second too. And a lot of folks hate doing the running. They hate doing jumping jacks. They hate all the cardio stuff. How do you manage to do that? Because there's probably a lot of folks listening right now who are just like, I don't want to do that, but we have to because we have to. How do you manage to do it and just not be bored out of your mind?
You got to learn to love it. Plain and simple. You know, I have a poster in the school, you know, Muhammad Ali. He would talk about how he hated every minute of training. And that stuck with me. Because like I said, you have to learn to love it. You know, there's a means to an end. And that is the disciplined approach. You have to love every aspect of the training. If you think that you're just going to step on the mat, start kicking paddles, start moving around with people without doing your road work, you're ignorant. You can only get so far. You know, name me a professional boxer that doesn't jog. Name me a professional boxer that doesn't jump rope, or any athlete of that matter, especially in combat sports. You know, because we know at 44 years old, I know Taekwondo. I know the sport. You have to do everything else, whether it is, as I said, you know, my road work, whether it is waking up at 4:30 in the morning and going to F45 and doing my circuit training while everyone is asleep, I'm going to work out. These are the sacrifices you have to make. Again, we either put 100% or we put nothing. So the road work is essential. And to any athlete coming up in, especially combat sports, if you're not willing to put that work in outside, you're only going to suffer inside the ring. Because my mindset is, and this is something my father always instilled in me, just when you think you're working hard, your opponent is working harder than you. If you keep that mindset, you never stop working hard. And like I said, you learn to love it. I turned running into my own personal competition. I would post stories on my Instagram, and people would actually track my times. Like, oh man, you're going faster. You're going faster. I'm like, oh, I'm going faster? That's it. New trail. I would PR and I would see my watch and I'd be like, wow, I just PR'd. Personal record. That's it. I got to pick a different course. I got to go quicker. So that became my competition outside of the competition. And in turn, what happens? I get back into shape. I get into the shape I want to be. Now, I feel confident going to Mexico, knowing the elevation where it is, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to withstand that and fight. So I can't emphasize how important the road work is.
And I think a big part of that too is the mental part of it, like you're saying, because let's be honest here, and this might sound pessimistic, but I think you'll agree, is that a lot of being a fighter is very much about suffering. And that's you're basically tearing up your body on a daily basis to make it grow stronger. Yeah. Mentally, it's wearing you down as well. And to be fair, too, fighting is a pretty selfish act. Because like you said, you have to sacrifice time with your family, time away from your school, time away from your students.
Yes.
So it is a lot of self-destructive behavior. Let's be quite honest here. Yeah. So
you're not wrong.
Yeah. So as far as like getting your mental health to where it needs to be, how does a fighter do that? How does a fighter at your level keep that mindset going strong? Especially as, we are both older gentlemen as well. How do we do that?
You have to be disciplined. Discipline is key in that. Self-discipline. I mean, I'll give you an example. You think I like taking my kids to Carvel and not getting ice cream? I'll give you a small example. I want ice cream too, but I know I know I'm training. I would go over my mother-in-law's house on Sunday, family dinner. And I would look at her and I would go up to her and I'd be like, please don't be offended that I'm not going to eat pasta. And she would look at me, she'd smile, and she would make some extra vegetables, and I love her for that. The little things, it all requires discipline. I would take my students out for a friendly gathering and we're all adults. And I'm having seltzer while they're enjoying adult beverages because I know I can't do that. It's, again, you have to learn to love the suffering. That's the only way you'll succeed.
And basically not make it suffering.
Exactly. I flip it into an inspiration. I flip it into, this is what's going to give me that competitive edge.
So you're looking beyond the immediate moment. You're looking to the future of what's going to get you.
You have to look forward. All that's going to benefit me the moment I step on that mat against my opponent. It's all in the fine details. The difference at this level between winning and losing, like I said, that foot stepping out at nationals, that was 1 point. It's the small details. So I took that loss and learned from it and said, something was missing in my training camp. And I fixed it. Something was missing here, and I fixed it. I wanted to leave no stone unturned, whether it was my diet, my nutrition, my strength and conditioning, my cardio, everything. You have to put on those blinders when it's time to go, because I don't only owe it to myself, owe it to my craft, but I owe it to my students looking up to me. I owe it to my family. I want to bring that medal home to my kids. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
Well, when this recording session is over, I'm going to take you to Carvel and we're going to get you 2 scoops. How about that?
That sounds like a plan.
So we got ice cream. We had a serving of humble pie with a side of spare ribs. And
tomorrow we eat pasta.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful.
Fantastic.
That does bring to another point because you talked about this with Jillian DeCourcy in your episode recently as well. You talked about how your diet is very important for mental health. And I think a lot of people might not really understand what that means. So I think now is probably a great time to really talk about that and what that means for you, why the diet is so important, not just for you dropping the pounds, but for your state of mind.
Yeah, it's tough because you can't just eat lettuce and ice cubes.
You're not a rabbit.
No, yeah. You need a good amount of protein, obviously, to recover. You need the carbs that metabolize into sugar in your body because that's what's going to give you energy. You need all that, but you have to be able to cut the portions. You have to be able to eat clean. You have to be able to, you can't indulge, but you need fuel at the end of the day. And I learned that. I really, really dived deep into that. And I'm going to give credit to, my nutritionist before I went to Korea, former USA national team member, Tim Thackeray, who runs the Juice Compound. And he basically taught me we don't eat to cut weight to compete. We eat to fuel our bodies. And there's a big difference in that. So when you learn that process, that you're fueling your body to work, because when you're doing your road work, you're training multiple times a day, your body's constantly moving. Again, going back to my first diet when I was very overweight, your body becomes a fat burning machine. You're constantly burning more calories than you're taking in. People would ask me all the time, they would be like, do you calorie count? I go, no. Because I knew I was training hard. So I knew I was burning more than I was taking in. The toughest part is at night.
Midnight snacking.
Oh, I love to snack.
That's not happening on your diet.
No. So I made it a point that when I would come home at night, I would have something very light. I need something, but it was nothing crazy. And I would immediately go in the shower and brush my teeth. Because once I brush my teeth, I'm not eating anymore. That's like the sign. That's like the mental, that was my cue that that's it, we're done eating. Brush my teeth, that's it. Again, this all takes an incredible amount of discipline, because the scale is very important to me. I've always taught my students, my first fight at a competition is against the scale. And you have to respect that scale. And I could honestly say in my life, I've never disrespected the scale. I've never got on that scale overweight. So that is a big deal to me, and I tell my athletes, don't you dare disrespect the scale. If you show up to an event and you're overweight, you better lose it before you get on the scale. And that's what John Rodriguez did in Mexico. He got there, he was like, Joe, I'm 3 pounds over. And I'll never forget how it happened. Gurvan looked at him. He's like, Johnny, let's go. And he went with him and they went to go lose that weight, because this is who we are. This is what we do, and that's my first match. So getting back to the nutrition of it, we fuel to compete. We fuel to work out to the best of our abilities. We fuel our bodies to recover. We don't fuel to cut weight. The cutting weight is going to happen with the hard work we put in, and then again, we get on that scale, we make that weight, and we have a good meal. And now we go to the ring happy. We don't go to the ring suffering. We don't go to the ring having to cut an enormous amount of weight, a couple of days prior to the event. No, we're already ready. We're already there. And that takes discipline.
so much of what you're talking about is very much just about transforming the mindset.
100%.
And I think that now kind of brings us to our journey to Mexico.
Yeah.
And we're talking about perspectives here as well, and just getting a line of vision for what's happening around you in your world. Talk to me about setting foot in Mexico, because you told me about this off camera, just the kind of culture shock that you went to, landing in Mexico City and then eventually taking your trip to where you're going to be fighting.
Yeah, it was the hair standing up on my arms thinking about it. It was a life-altering experience. And it was beautiful. My eyes opened up in many, many, many different ways. When I told my students, the families, I was going to Mexico, right away they think something beautiful.
They all the nice villas,
beautiful
touristy spots.
Yeah, exactly. They think, when we went to Italy, I was in Torino, the home of my favorite soccer team, Juventus, and all, Fiat and all the industry in Italy. You're a few steps away from Milano, and I went there, and you go to all these tourist spots. When I competed in Puerto Rico, I'm in San Juan, when I, obviously Korea, we were in Jeonju, a beautiful village, Muju in Taekwondo Wan, which is like the mecca of Taekwondo. It's basically a town built around Taekwondo. And then we end up in Seoul, a beautiful city.
Yeah, basically just metropolitan areas.
All
it's like New York, just another
beautiful
country.
Areas. So I'm not going to lie, when I heard we were landing in Mexico City, I love sports. The first thing that came to my mind was Formula One. One of the big Formula One races is run in Mexico City.
Right.
So I'm thinking we're going to be in some beautiful metropolitan city, and we're on the outskirts. And I'm like, all right, this is good too. And, that first day in Mexico City, me and Carlos Villanueva, we woke up in the morning, 7:00, and we're like, let's go take a walk. We started walking around, and at that point, it started hitting us. Life started hitting us. And the amount of appreciation that we need to have on a daily basis, and the amount of gratitude we need to have for being in the position that we're in, started hitting us. Again, humble pie.
What did you see that affected you like that?
Obviously you start to see poverty. You start to kick yourself in the ass for what we complain about, And it's not a question of, feeling sorry for anyone, because these were some of the most beautiful people I met. They were so kind. They beautiful, beautiful culture. And it just hit me here. So that was the first day. And now we hop on that bus and we make our way. It was about a 2-hour trip to where we're competing in San Andres Timilpan. And I did what you said. I took my phone, I put it up against the glass, I just started taking videos. But then at one point I stopped. And I saw things that I've never been so up close to. Real poverty.
What does real poverty look like when you see it?
It was...
Because we all probably, a lot of folks who are listening, they might know what it looks like from those ads you might see on TV,
Exactly.
Send money, but what are you seeing? Because you're seeing it now firsthand.
Now I'm seeing it firsthand. I'm seeing, cement block houses no bigger than where we're sitting right now, with a curtain for a door and a piece of plastic for a roof. dirt roads, things that, you know, you only see, like you said, in those, you know, those commercials on TV. And I'm seeing it for the first time up close and personal. And it hits you. It hits you. It gives you a perspective of where we are, you know, and I'm like, wow, I'm about to compete here. And it definitely got my mindset in the right place. And I appreciated from that moment forward, obviously from being in Mexico City and now moving into this, every single moment of that trip, every single second was a blessing. And I really, really took every moment to heart.
You told me a few stories that maybe we'll get to on this episode tonight, but a lot of them involve children. And that's got to be hard for you, especially not only as a parent, but as a teacher, because you know, one of those kids could be your students.
100%.
That's got to just be the most hurtful thing to see.
Oh my God. And I get a little emotional thinking about it. It's, seeing the kids was the hardest thing. Seeing kids like that, you know, because nobody wants to be in that position. Let's be real. And to see kids going through that was tough. As a parent, as a father, and anyone that knows me as a father, my kids are my everything. And that was very tough. Again, we appreciate life even more, you know. And then we get to the opening ceremonies. You know, I want to give a quick shout out to Master Angel, who ran this tournament, the Mugung International Tournament. And he did a phenomenal job, him and his staff. But we get there, and this has never happened to me at any competition. Little kids came up to me, and all the members of the team, actually, it was beautiful. They just wanted to take pictures with us. They didn't want anything. They just wanted a picture with us.
They just wanted to say they stood by these Taekwondo giants.
Yeah, you know, and they, you know, they saw the USA on our backs. I'm wearing the same exact jacket and same exact warm-up suit I wore for the opening ceremonies, and these kids are smiling. You know, it was like, I was like, oh my God. And prior to that, we took a beautiful picture, as you see here, by the pyramid. And, you know, Master Chet, after we took some pictures of us by the pyramid, there was a group of kids. And they just took pictures with him. You know, that's all they wanted. You know, it was great. You know, and now it's not just the children, the people there. You know, it was such a humbling, beautiful experience. You know, it made me feel important. And it just only meant that I had a responsibility to perform at my best for not only myself, not only for the sport, not only for my teammates, but for the people that were there, you know? And again, I started taking everything to heart. Everything.
So I can tell just by hearing you talk about this story, like it's all going into, it's lighting the fire, it's adding more fuel to the fire, if you will.
For sure.
Because you're the kind of guy that does take on the weight of others.
Yes.
And especially when you go into a fight, like you're taking on that weight, like this is my burden to bear, and I'm going to leave it all on the mat for everyone, for all these people, to give them something to hold on to.
Yeah.
So I guess on that note, let's kind of get now into the fights.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this has been a long journey there. You've had your world turned upside down, physically, mentally, and now you're seeing all this other stuff, this whole new world, essentially. Mm-hmm. Now it's time for reality to kick in.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the fights. And I think the first thing we have to talk about here is the other opponent that you're dealing with, which we talked about earlier. is those 9,000 feet of elevation.
Yes.
So, and you learned about that before you even actually set foot onto those competition mats.
Yeah. And so we're at, the hotel in San Andres Timilpan, and our amazing coach, Grandmaster Lee, led us in a training session. But prior to that, we knew the elevation hit us when we were at the pyramids, because Master Angel, he set up an amazing dinner for the entire team alongside our amazing team captain, Trinity Tong Osborne, in a cave.
Which I'm very jealous of, by the way. I wish I was there for that. The tournament, no, I don't need to get kicked in the face, but I want to be in that pyramid eating some food.
Oh, my God. And so we were in a cave before getting to the pyramid, and we get down there, and it's just picturesque. It's just amazing. The Mexican culture, and it was just phenomenal. It was, I got no words for it. It's so beautiful. Please go to my social media and check out the pictures. The pictures don't even do justice, but it was just amazing. But during the dinner, I'll be honest, I had to get up and I had to go to the bathroom.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah. And I want to say it was about, from the bottom of the cave, it was a good 50 to 75 steps to go up. And I remember getting up to the top of the steps, and my hands just went on my knees. And I keeled over, and I was like, holy cow. Like, I started breathing heavy. I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, all right, went to the bathroom, did my thing. And
Enough said.
And then went back down the stairs, finished eating, had dessert, had a great cup of coffee. And now it's time for all of us to leave, to go get ready, to change into our uniforms and our team jackets to go take some team pictures. And I remember going up those steps and looking at my teammates. They started doing it too. They were like, oh man, did you feel that? Did you feel that? At that point, I knew the elevation was going to be a key factor.
Yeah.
So that now getting to that training session, it got tough real fast. And at that point, I knew mentally, I always believe in, we train intense. We always have to be intense. But physically, I decided to slow it down a little bit. I wasn't going to go too crazy because I didn't want to gas out. I wanted to really, really, really pace myself. So that first night of training, I paced myself. The second night of training, we did another kick out. Again, I paced myself because I wanted to really conserve my energy for the match. And you know what? Thank God I did. Because when the draw came out, the bracket came out, my first opponent was from Mexico.
A local to the area.
Local to the area.
So they're acclimated to this already.
Acclimated to it. So at that point in my mind, when I saw that bracket, I was like, wow, I got to fight really, really smart. I can't, gas out. I can't empty out my fuel tank.
You can't go full intensity, essentially.
No. No. Intensity was always up. Always up. But I knew I had to be very strategic.
Pull back the aggression.
Exactly. I knew I had to really, really listen to my coach in the chair. Shout out to Master Joe Santaros from Texas. Thank you, brother. I knew I had to really, really stay focused, but I also had to be very, very strategic. Every kick, every movement, every mannerism counted.
Mm. And just to be clear, too, for the folks who are listening or watching and don't quite understand all the science behind this here, because, they're probably saying, but Master Joe, you ran, 5K up hills. Like, shouldn't that have been enough? But the answer is no, because the difference is 9,000 feet of elevation. It's the deprivation of oxygen. There is a lack of oxygen to even take in to begin with. So running for the hills is great for your cardio. It's wonderful. But if there's no oxygen to get back into your system, it really doesn't make a difference. So that's what you're dealing with, is you can't get air back into you.
Definitely not. And 3 days was, to be honest, I don't even think 3 weeks would have been enough to acclimate to that.
And most fighters who are professional boxers, MMA fighters, like they will come at least a week in advance to prep, if not, in some cases, 2 to 3 to set up a whole camp in that area. Like that's what Tito Ortiz would do before his fights. He would go up to Big Bear, elevation of like 5,000, 6,000 feet, and just get all that intense training done.
And now you also have to take into account we're masters athletes.
Yes,
we're not 18 years old.
So healing is a little bit slower. Acclimation's a little bit slower.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I said 3 days was definitely not enough. But, and this is something I'm very big on, I don't believe in excuses. There's no excuses. We adapt or we die. And at that moment, it's time to adapt.
Well, let's talk about that adaptation then. Let's go to your very first fight here. This is now, you're starting to understand the limitations that are currently put on you here. So walk us through first fight of the night.
Yeah, the first fight. So I'm listening to my coach, and you know what? I want to start off strong. When I fight, it's very important to me to make the first contact on my opponent. I don't want my opponent making the first contact on me.
I want to set the tone.
I want to set the tone. I want to show my opponent mentally and physically that I'm in charge.
This is about creating the commanding presence that you're leading this match. They got to come play your game.
I want to get to the center of the ring. I don't want to be on the outside of the ring. I want to control that mat. So right away, I make my first contact. Then I make my second contact. And I saw that, he dropped his arm on both my 2 contacts. So at that point, I knew I was baiting him. I faked it to the body, and I went right up to the head, and it scored. And scoring, because he was a little taller than me, the kick in the head threw me a little off balance, because he went forward as I kicked him. I scored on the headgear, but I ended up falling down. And so I lost a point. But when I fell down, I started breathing. I was like, ooh.
Folks don't realize when you hit that ground at elevations, the act of just picking yourself up those few feet from on your knees back to your feet, that's just like you're carrying 50 pounds all of a sudden.
Exactly. So I felt it right away. And at that point, I was up. I just wanted to command the lead. And I started playing a very, very safe fight.
Now, when you say safe, do you mean defensive fight or more just...
Defensive, yet be very quick on my counters. And it worked. And I won that first round 9 points to, I want to say, 5. So it was a good, because the new rules in Taekwondo is not like when we were in Korea or when I competed in Italy or Puerto Rico or Nationals or US Open. It's best 2 out of 3 rounds. So it's very important to me. It's very important you win that first round. You don't want to be behind the 8 ball going into round 2. So I got that first round under my belt. Round 2 comes along. Obviously now you're breathing a little heavy after round 1.
In the case of someone who's not from the area, you're breathing a lot heavy.
Exactly. And I'm, again, up against a Mexican opponent who's pushing the pace now. Because now he's behind the 8 ball. He's got to beat me 2 rounds in a row. I just need 1. So he's applying the pressure now in round 2. And he made contact to my electronic chest protector. He didn't score, but he made contact. So at that point, it's 0-0, but he had the advantage. And my coach made me well aware of that. And he yelled out, he's like, Lupo, you got to score. You got to score. And he tried going to my head. And I made him miss. I kind of parried his foot off to the side, and I threw my back leg roundhouse kick and scored flush on his chest protector.
That's a technique I see you teach all the time at that school.
Yeah, very, very, very simple. Very simple. Again, like I said, I was fighting very strategic. If you were to see my fights in Mexico as compared to when I fought in Korea I fought very open. I fought, throwing beautiful spinning kicks, any opportunity I had, throwing high-level skills, high-level techniques. No, Korea was the opposite. I had to play a simple game. Again, because of that altitude. I couldn't I couldn't empty out the gas tank on high risk techniques. I had to be very smart. So once I had that 2-0 lead, there was about maybe, I want to say about 10 seconds left in the round, which felt like an eternity, especially.
You can't breathe.
Can't breathe. But I'm really, really focused and listening, to my coach. And he's like, play it smart, Lupo, play it smart. And I hear that in my ear. And I was able to fend my opponent off. He got a minus point for kicking me low. And there was like 1 second left. And my opponent knew he wasn't going to get the round. He actually stuck out his hand as a sign of respect with the second left, and he gave me a fist bump.
Sportsmanship.
Yeah, to the highest degree. And I was able to win that match. And
he did you a favor too, because even just that 1 second, you got another second, get some air back. And
1 second. That's
a gift.
1 second is one kick to the head.
Yeah.
One kick to the head is 3 points. If he would have spun on me, it would have been 5 points. There was a lot of things that could have happened in that 1 second. He could have thrown a back kick to my body, a turning technique. That would have been 4 points. I would have given him the match. But at that point, with the second left, I guess he felt he knew he wasn't coming back. So he stuck out his hand. I cautiously, though, fist bumped him.
You gotta be careful.
I have to be careful.
You never know.
So I kind of moved back a little bit. I kind of extended my arm as long as I could. I didn't want to get hit. But no, I wasn't worried about it. I saw the look in his eyes. He was a gentleman. He was a sportsman. And we took a beautiful picture afterwards. There was a lot of photographers at the event, and we're holding each other's hand up. It's just, again, sportsmanship. But I was happy to get through that, and I knew I was going to be in the final.
And how many matches total did you have in this
2
event? So that's your entry point here. So now it's time for the finals.
The gold medal match.
So how much time did you have in between to recuperate?
I want to say about 10 minutes.
Not a lot.
Not a lot of time.
I mean, some tournaments it might be that time, but again, you're not at that elevation.
No.
So 10 minutes, it's more like, you probably really need 30 to get your breath back.
I would have loved that, but no, we gotta, again, no excuses. We gotta suck it up, buttercup. we gotta get ready. And again, in the final, he actually beat one of my teammates, Roberto Arana from Utah, who shout out to him. And, I'll give a shout out to Roberto because I guess you probably softened him up a little bit for me. Thank you.
That's what brothers do, right?
Yeah, right. But at that point, I knew I was going in there with another Mexican player who, again, is
acclimated
to that elevation, to that atmosphere. And again, I knew I was in there for a tough match.
So what is the strategy here? Because again, you can't really breathe as easily. You can't do the same tools. A lot of your toys are taken away from you. So what is the game plan?
The game plan, Coach Joe went in there and we saw him fight. And we saw some tendencies that I knew I could take advantage of.
This is the value of a good coach. You get that intel, you get that insight that you might miss.
I mean, he was, I can't say enough about Coach Joe. He was amazing. And, he looked at me and he told me something to do. And then I piggybacked on top of it. He's like, yes, you see that? Take it. You got the confidence, take it. And round 1 worked. We noticed that, every time he would go down to the body, he would actually crouch his body low. So Coach Joe said, once he goes low, flip the foot over and try to catch him in the head. And it worked. And that's actually that picture right there.
That's the moment. And that was round 1. And that set the pace for that round. And I was able to win that round clearly. But again, now we go into round 2. I know he's going to come at me because he's got to get 2 rounds straight. I just need 1. He has to be the aggressor. He has to be the aggressor. No choice at all. And that's what ended up happening. And the round didn't go as planned. No. It did not. I had trouble scoring. I guess his coach changed the game plan. And he scored on me with a punch. But the one thing I was able to do was I was able to apply pressure
which took all my will because I did not want to go to the third round. And I was able to get him out of the ring. And I did it 4 times. And as per the Taekwondo rules, you're allowed 5. At the 5th penalty, you lose the round. Regardless of even if you're up in score, you get 5 gamjans or 5 single minus points, you lose that round. So we're at 4-4 with, I don't know, it was a few seconds left. No, it was, I guess we could start from like the 10-second point, and it's 4-4. And Coach Joe is yelling, we need one more gamjan. Get him out of the ring, get him out of the ring. But for some reason, he was in the corner and the referee stopped the action and kind of moved him towards the middle. I was like, oh, man.
So the ref wanted action, no penalties.
I don't know. He didn't want, I guess, he did him a favor, I guess.
I don't know. And, sometimes
hey, listen, home court advantage. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to blame it on that. I'm not going to make accusations, but that's what happened. And we moved towards the middle. And I hear Coach Joe yell out, punch. And he came, because he was towards the edge again. He came in, made a move. I went to slide back, but I slid back a little bit, not a lot, to open up a kick. Instead, I came in with a punch. And my back was to the screen. So I have no idea if it scored or not. So when I threw that punch and I hit it, I heard my coach yell. And in my head, I was like, I just scored that punch. Referee breaks us up. Fight ends. And that was it. And I won 5-4.
Fighting smart. Round. Fighting smart, not hard.
Fighting smart. Having total, complete faith in my coach, who had faith in my skill. We were in tune. And I won that round and won the match.
And I got to say too, the techniques you're talking about here, these are things that like I've seen when I was in class with you. I've seen you teach. These are like fundamental techniques. That kick that you mentioned that won the first fight.
Yes.
The counter punch you just mentioned that basically won you your second fight here. These are things you teach very early on in
very
fight
early
classes.
on. I'll tell you straight out, a slide back roundhouse kick with the back leg. I teach that to white belts.
Yeah. I know that kick well. It's a sneaky, deceptive, but effective technique. It's a great move.
A reverse punch. I think that's probably one of the first techniques you might learn in any martial art.
And so many folks in Taekwondo do overlook the punch because you don't really get a point with that, if I'm correct. But it does have a lot of importance as far as what it can do.
And a simple reverse punch won me the gold medal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens then? You've just won the match. You've just discovered this fact. What's next?
Oh man, at that point, I got very overcome by emotion. The referee took off the chest protector, and at that
must have felt like 100 pounds off your body, I'm sure.
Oh my God. And it was like a weighted vest at that point. So it takes off the chest protector, and something came over me. I love the sport so much, and as you mentioned in the beginning, I have spoken about that this might be my last fight. And again, like when I first stepped back into the ring, I heard my father's voice. And I got into the center of the ring. I kneeled down and I kissed that mat. Put my face right down and I kissed that mat. And I got up and I did the sign of my cross and I looked up. But then something really amazing happened. And Chet was standing right there. He had just won his final match too. And he looked at me and he said, Joe, look. The entire side of the crowd that was right by the ring, they got up and they started clapping. And Chet looked at me and goes, Joe, this is for you. And it was probably the most beautiful experience I've ever experienced in a ring. They didn't know why. They didn't know why I did that sign of my cross. You know, they didn't know I was looking up at my father. But it felt like they were with me at that moment. The people of Mexico are very religious. You know, the day before the fight, you know, we went into San Andres and I saw a beautiful church. And I said right away to one of my teammates, Alejandra Prieto, love you. I was like, Alejandra, Alex, I need to go inside this church. And then before we left, I said to her, I go, please, can you come with me? I want to light a candle. And like I said, when I at that point, obviously I realized, you know, the people of Mexico, you know, they hold religion very, 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 very high. And when I was on that mat and I did that sign of the cross, and I looked over and I got up and I saw, like I said, and when Chet said, Jojo, look, and everyone just started clapping. And he grabbed my hand and he pulled me closer to the crowd. And I had a girl, I don't know who she was, she hugged me. I had another, you know, father pat me on the shoulder, and I just went like this to the people. I kissed at them, and they just kept clapping. I was like, oh my God. It was real. It was real. It was surreal. It was a moment that I could never, ever, I will never, ever forget for the rest of my life. It was the most heartwarming, beautiful experience. And then that same girl who gave me a 5 goes, I want to take a picture with you. I was like, yeah. I was all sweaty. I was like, yeah. She took a selfie of me. And then she looked at me, she goes, you beat my father in the first match.
Wow.
I was like, my God. How beautiful is that?
That's true sportsmanship right there. Yeah.
The guy I beat in the first match, the daughter, you know, was so happy to take a picture with me. And the other father was like, come take a picture with my son, you know, and they're calling me because now we have to go to the medal stand. And I'm taking pictures with people in the crowd and they're still clapping. Oh, wow, this is going on. Whether it was the gesture I made to kiss that mat, whether it was the sign of my cross, you know, the people in the stands, they were with me at that moment. And all the hard work I put in, you know, I reaped the fruits of my labor, so to say. You know, I knew it was all worth it, you know.
And while I am of a different religious area, I mean, I know that the sign of the cross, it's there as a protection. Yes. It's also there as a declaration, essentially, of who you are. And then they definitely must have related to that and saw that in you. And what a way to wrap things up. But I do have to say, like, you know, I have to press you on this now because you didn't tell me what he said. What did your father say to you?
He said, bravo, Papa. Bravo, which is basically good job. That's what I heard.
And this goes back to the method to my madness, because at the start of this interview, I asked you about your very first tournament. Yeah. And I wanted to learn about that because there's little 5-year-old Joe. And there's certainly, you know, a child that is seeking the approval of his dad. And I think you said this before. These are your own words. You literally built a shrine to that man in the New York Black Belt Center. Yeah. So, you know, you said a lot throughout this interview as well, who you fight for. And your dad is one of those people that you fight for. But I also do want to kind of change that perspective a little bit here because, as I said earlier, and we agreed, fighting is a very selfish, kind of self-centered thing to do. So while you are fighting, carrying all the weight of these different people, you also are fighting for you. So I kind of want to get to the bottom of this right now. Like, who is Master Joe truly fighting for? What is the reason for fighting?
What is the reason for fighting? It's a love for the sport. It's a passion. It's a feeling of self-fulfillment. It's owning up to those words when you enter my school. And you've seen those words many times. A leader leads by example. Every word I speak to my students, I want them to look at me and say, he walks the walk. He's not just telling us to do something just to do it. He does it because he says it because he knows it works. He understands not only the joy of victory, he understands how to lose, how to learn from it. Fighting for me, at the end of the day, I feel it's the truest form of sport. You know, you against another individual. It's the greatest test, physically and mentally. Like I said, physically and mentally, the greatest test. It's, again, I want people to look at me as being real. I don't want to be a fraud in any way. And there's too many of that in many different industries. You know, a lot of backseat drivers, a lot of swim coaches who never jumped in the pool. I never want to be associated with that. And that's a big reason why I compete. And again, it's to make my family proud of me, make my kids proud of me. My wife proud of me, but above all, my dad proud of me. That's my goal every day I wake up. Every time I turn that key to open up my school, people say to me, your dad is proud of you. And he is. I know that. But true love is never enough. There's always room for more. And I will always find a way to make that man proud.
Well, in this 40-plus year journey you've had in the world of Taekwondo, bringing us to what could be the final fight of Master Joseph Lupo Jr., we know that your dad is proud of you. We know the school is proud of you. We know your family is proud of you. Is Master Joseph Lupo Jr. proud of himself?
I am. After this experience in Mexico that I said was life changing in many, many ways, has given me such a different perspective on life. I am proud of myself, you know, for the hard work I put in.
And that's not just boasting too, because I know for a lot of folks to like say those words, it's not an easy thing to say.
No, definitely. And you know me well. There's no ego here.
This is culmination.
Yeah,
of decades.
I'm not ego driven. I'm not, you know, it's funny. You know, my kids made me a card, you know, basically congratulating me. And my son wrote in the card, Daddy, you're the best in the world. And I pulled him, I go, thank you, Alessio, but I just want to be the best to you. I don't need to be the best in the world. You know, I don't have that ego. I don't. I'm humble in victory. I'm gracious in victory. And you know what? I would have been in defeat as well. You know, it's just who I am. I could honestly say I am definitely proud of myself for what I accomplished.
So what do you think? Is this really the end of your fight career?
Nothing is concrete.
So what would get you back on those mats?
Nothing is concrete. But for now, yes, 100%. I do not foresee myself competing in a ring for the near future. Again, I don't want to miss anything in my kids' lives. My son is 10, my daughter is 6. And it's very important to me that I don't miss anything, because these are developmental years for my children, and they need dad there. And as you put it, you know, competing is a selfish thing. My kids have to come before me. You know, I've been blessed to be able to do it, you know, the number of times I have over the past 5 years, but I don't want to miss anything. I want to be able to take my children with me, take my family with me, my wife and my kids, to competitions and coach, so I could spend time with them and then coach my athletes. You know, after the competition is over, I want to go back with my family and maybe go sightseeing with them. You know what I mean? I want to take them along this journey, and it puts me at ease. You know, my son is at his age now that I could take him with me.
Yeah.
You know, I plan on taking him in January to the U.S. Masters Cup, where as of right now, I'm coaching 11 athletes. And my son will be with me by my side. You know, it'll be amazing in that sense. So, yeah, I want them to come with me on the journey, you know, and I'm at ease with that.
I think, you know, from my perspective too, having known you for this many years. I think what I would look forward to seeing from you now is you being able to kind of pursue Taekwondo as the art form, as the art itself, and not having to worry about picking up a gold medal. I mean, you're going to still have your coaching and all that, but I feel like now is the time where you can explore more of what it means for you and what it means beyond just the sport, just as the art form of it.
Oh yeah. Invest more into my students. You know, I've always said it, and I tell this to my students all the time. I'll bring up an example. One of my greatest joys ever let's say this as a coach. I'll bring up an example. My student Alexa, who's been with me for 14 years. When I coached her and she made her first senior national team, oh my God, the feeling of accomplishment was immense. And then the year after, coaching her to a gold medal at nationals. I always want my students to achieve more than I ever will. I'll bring up another example. The leader of my leadership team, Instructor Rocco. When the students come up to me, not the students, the parents come up to me and say, you know, Master Joe, I want my kid to grow up to be a respectful boy like Rocco. That's so gratifying to me, you know, because that means that I not only raised a good martial arts instructor, with obviously his family being the main contributor, but I played a role into his character development. That is a massive accomplishment for me, you know. So now being able to completely focus on the betterment of my students on and off the mats, that's an amazing goal. I mean, I've been doing it over the past 14 years since I've had the school, but now I get to really dive deep into that, like you said, into the art.
Well, I think now we kind of can wrap this up in full circle, because we started this interview talking about your dad, and your story of martial arts is incomplete without your dad. And here you are now. And you know that you're doing this. You basically, you know, we said you built the shrine to your dad. You built the physical shrine, but you've also built the inside shrine, if you will, because you have become that father figure for all these different people who have come to learn from you. So it's always full circle. It's always back. It is the same story, just different people.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what your journey has been. And this feels like it is the great culmination. And I feel like it's going to probably be, you know, maybe you'll grow some hair in your head, then you'll fight again. Maybe that'll be the plan. We'll see. Like, let's make that be the day.
If that's the case, I'm never fighting, because it's not coming back, my man. It's not.
So I think on that note, I'm going to hand the reins of the show back to you. But I will say before that I wrap up my ramblings here, I want to thank everybody on my behalf for watching this episode tonight. And if you liked hearing me talk and want to see what else I do out there, besides the myriad of videos that are on the New York Black Belt Center YouTube channel, I also have a podcast, which is called Trek Untold, which is a Star Trek-centric podcast. Oddly enough, might be groaning already, but don't worry. We barely talk about Star Trek. It is an sort of inside Hollywood look at the actors, writers, directors, performers, stunt people, VFX crew who make Star Trek shows and all sorts of other things in Hollywood. Talk about that show. We talk about their personal lives, learn a lot about them, and get a lot of really great life lessons. So please check out Trek Untold on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And on that note, that's my sell of the night.
There you go.
Master Joe, the show is once again yours. I relinquish control. Back to you.
So, before we wrap up this episode of A Black Belt Way of Life, I do want to give a shout out to all my team members on the USA Masters team. I'm going to look at the photo. Carlos Villanueva, representing New York, now based out of Florida, member of the New York Black Belt Center. Alan Hunsaker from Utah. Chet Bridgewater, representing the New York Black Belt Center. Mr. Mike Otto from Minnesota. Our coach, Grandmaster Dong Lee. Joaquin Pinkard, who I mentioned in a previous episode of A Black Belt Way of Life, from Atlanta. Tony Cabrera from Texas. Michael Culver from Washington State. Kurvan Abdulkadirov from Brooklyn, New York, my man. Mr. Roberto Arana from Utah. Miss Maria Kaiser from California. Polly Williamson from Utah. Are amazing, awesome, and without her, none of this would be possible. There would be no U.S. Masters team. Ma'am, you do not give yourself enough credit for the lives you have touched and for everyone like myself that you've made a better person. Trinity Tong Osborne, Marcus Park, now out of Texas, Alejandra Prieto from Texas, who I'm going to say my kids love. They can't wait to see you. Angel Patterson Arana from Utah, and last but not least, my brother from another mother, John Rodriguez of the New York Black Belt Center.
Hashtag put some sugar on it.
Put some sugar on that lip, baby. So to everyone and the entire USA Masters team community, I cannot wait to see all you guys at the US Masters Cup in January. So parting, again, a quick word from our sponsor, Whispers of Wisdom by Master Anthony Graff. Please go on Amazon, purchase it. It's going to better your life in so many ways. On that note, check us out on YouTube, subscribe, give us a like, leave us a comment. If you are interested in advertising or sponsoring A Black Belt Way of Life, shoot us an email at ablackbeltwayoflife@gmail.com. And then follow us wherever you consume your podcasts. Master Joseph Lupo Jr. here. Remember what my father always says: a black belt is worn around your heart, never your waist. A Black Belt Way of Life was produced by Press Record Studios.